We all know the famous leap of faith scene from Into the Spider-Verse. I would say this scene is one of my most favorite scenes from the entire movie, as the same with many others. But did you know there's actually a leap of faith scene in Across the Spider-Verse? In this scene where Miles is questioning if Miguel is even Spider-Man, Miguel replies asking if Miles is Spider-Man. Then Miles does the whole leap of faith thing where he somehow manages to break the metal off the train while jumping off. And then he goes on to kick Miguel. In my opinion, this scene was so much weaker than the one we got in the first movie. In this video, I'm going to be talking about some things I didn't like about Across the Spider-Verse, because I feel like even though this movie may seem perfect, it does have a couple of flaws. And don't get me wrong, this is one of my most favorite movies, but it does have a couple of flaws. So without further ado, let's get into why I didn't like the leap of faith scene in Across the Spider-Verse. In Into the Spider-Verse, the entire movie was really building up for this scene. And what pushed it over the edge was Miles' conversation with Peter B. Parker in this scene and with his father in this scene. With these two pivotal scenes, along with whatever happened prior in the movie, it really gave an emotional backstory to the leap of faith. And when the leap of faith happened, all of that emotional and character buildup where Miles never knew his place in the world, and now in this moment, he finally knew, it was such a satisfying conclusion to the character Miles, who found out what his purpose was. However, if we compare that with Across the Spider-Verse's leap of faith, there was no build-up in the movie. The entire movie focused more on Spider-Man's various relationships, like the ones with his mother, his father, the other Spider people, and the biggest of them all, Gwen Stacy. In fact, I would say a lot of this movie is Gwen Stacy finding out who she is instead of Miles. This is because throughout the movie, she's unsure who to side with. Should she side with Miguel, who somewhat offered her a sense of family with the other Spider people? Or should she side with Miles, who is her first real friend since Peter died, and her love interest? In my opinion, they should have had a leap of faith scene with Gwen in this movie, where she finally realizes who she is, rather than having Miles do the leap of faith, because they spent all of Into the Spider-Verse to develop Miles' character and for him to learn his place in the world. In Across the Spider-Verse, this scene felt really forced and really didn't fit into the theme of this movie. However, if they did it with Gwen, it would have made so much sense. It would have showed the exact moment where she finally knew what she had to do in order to mend her relationship with Miles. I would have rather had this scene with Gwen rather than that short 1-minute monologue at the end of the movie where she explains how she finally found her crew. Personally, I feel like if they included this leap of faith as well as the monologue at the end of the movie, it would have been so good. And something cool they could have done is doing the leap of faith for Miles G. Morales in the next movie too, to find out who he is. That would have made the holy trilogy, with the first movie being Miles finding out who he is, the second being Gwen finding out who she is, and finally, Miles G. Morales finding out who he is in the third movie. In my opinion, that would have made a really cool motif throughout the entire trilogy. Another thing I didn't really like about the movie is how there was no main song that drove the storyline. Into the Spider-Verse featured songs that really made an impact to the story, like Scared of the Dark, which played during Miles' leap of faith scene, and Sunflower, which was an amazing song that showed the growth of Miles throughout Into the Spider-Verse. And that movie used these songs in a way that really complemented the movie, and every time they used the songs, it really fit. However, in Across the Spider-Verse, even though the songs themselves are so much better to listen to, the way that they were used in the movie didn't have much of an impact. When I first listened to the songs themselves after watching the movie, I don't remember hearing a single song while actually watching the movie. However, for Into the Spider-Verse, the songs were much more memorable, especially Sunflower and Scared of the Dark, because they were used in a way that made a big impact. I think the only scene in Across the Spider-Verse where I absolutely loved the song was used when Self-Love played during the intro sequence. That song really brought out the emotions Gwen was feeling at the time, and in my opinion was used perfectly. But even though these songs in Across the Spider-Verse didn't really complement the movie that much, I still love the songs and I listen to them on a daily basis. My next biggest complaint about this movie is that nothing happened in the movie. In my opinion, this is what both makes and breaks the movie. I just felt like barely anything happened in the movie that made it feel complete and made it feel like a full movie. The entire movie of Across the Spider-Verse felt more like a setup for Beyond the Spider-Verse rather than a movie which had a beginning, middle, and end. When the movie ended, it felt to me that there wasn't really a conclusion to the movie. I still felt empty on the inside, whereas with most movies I see with cliffhangers, I don't have the same feeling. Let's take Infinity War for example. This movie, although it had a cliffhanger, it had a proper conclusion to the movie, which was everyone snapped into dust and Thanos ended up winning the war. To me, that was a satisfying conclusion to the movie because you clearly knew who won and who lost. And if I'm being honest with you, even if they ended the MCU right there, it still would have been an amazing ending. But if we look at Across the Spider-Verse, there was no conclusion to anything. At the beginning of the movie, there was a spot. At the end of the movie, there's a stronger and better spot. At the beginning of the movie, there's Miguel hunting Miles down. At the end of the movie, there's Miguel hunting Miles. And if those two plot lines weren't enough, the movie introduced yet another character at the last second, that being Miles G. Morales. With this many unfinished plot lines, most of which battling for screen time, the movie really didn't feel like it had an ending at all. But this is also what made the movie so good. This type of storytelling is so fresh in my opinion, where it hasn't been used in many places before. For example, most movies introduce the main antagonist in the first scene of the movie, or usually in the first 10 to 20 minutes of the movie. However, we didn't learn of the spot until after Gwen's intro sequence, which was about 25 minutes long. And another thing is, the movie didn't follow the widely used beginning, middle, and end most movies use. A lot of people could say that the beginning of the movie is everything that happened before Miles went to Mumbai, while others could say the beginning is everything before the party for Miles' father. And a lot of people could say the end of the movie is when he gets transported into Earth 42, while others might say the end of the movie is when he flees from the Spider Society. This movie breaks so many rules of storytelling, just like how Hobie isn't keen on following the rules, and also how Miles is going to do things his own way, just like he says in this scene.
Everyone keeps telling me how my story is supposed to go. Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing.
The way this movie breaks so many rules of storytelling is something I admire about this movie, but it's also the thing I despise about the movie. This is because as a person that's watched so many movies with the beginning, middle, and end rule, I'm accustomed to it, just like many of you are. But when this movie came out and it told a story in an unconventional way without a proper ending, at first I wasn't sure how to feel about it. And after a lot of thinking, I both love and hate it. I love it in the sense where it really works for this movie. The way the story is told totally fits for what the movie is trying to do. But I don't like it in the sense I don't want other movies copying this style of storytelling just because this movie was so successful. As the video comes to an end, I just want to reiterate that I absolutely love Across the Spider-Verse, and in no way by making this video am I hating on it. In fact, it's one of my most favorite movies ever. So don't come at me in the comments saying I'm just another Spider-Verse hater, please. And if you did enjoy this video, be sure to check out my other videos as well as liking this video and subscribing. And I'll see you in my next video.